In the previous section, we learned how to take two different variables and take a look at the relationship between them using a scatter plot. We saw in many instances that when we do this, that there is a correlation between these two variables, often a linear correlation. The data appear to fall in a line. What we would like to eventually be able to do is to take data that appears to have a linear correlation and find the line that best approximates that relationship. This process is called linear regression. But before we get into that, in this section, we are going to take a moment to review linear equations. Now, you may remember a linear equation from algebra. We often write linear equations in algebra as y equals mx plus b for two numbers m and b. But in statistics, we write this equation a little bit differently. It's the same equation, but we just write it a little bit differently. We usually write it as a plus bx. So here, x and y are your variables. We call x the independent variable. And y the dependent variable. And a and b are just constant numbers. Okay, so this shows a linear relationship between these two variables. Often we think about x as causing y. Now that's, strictly speaking, not always the case, but that's often how we think about things. X causes y or determines y. And in that sense, y depends on x. And that's why y is called the dependent variable and x is the independent variable. Okay? A and b have special roles too. The point 0, a is the y-intercept of the line if we were to graph it out. Okay? That is, the line will go through this point on the y-axis if we were to plot this on the xy plane. And b is the slope of the line. The slope of the line tells us both the steepness of the line and the direction. Tells us the steepness and direction of the line. Okay, so let's look at a few examples to kind of get an idea of what these values, different values of a and b can do. Okay. So here we have the line y equals 1 plus 0.5 times x. Let me write it over here to the side so I don't cover up the numbers. Y equals 1 plus 0.5 times x. So my y-intercept is 1. So when I look at the y-axis right here, I am going through the point 0, 1. Okay, so 1 is the value of a. And my b, my slope, is 0.5. So in this case, b is equal to 0.5. That is a positive number. It's greater than 0. It's a positive number. When you have a positive slope, the direction of your line is uphill. If you look left to right, that line's going uphill. In other words, as your x's get bigger, your y's also get bigger. Okay? So uphill. And how big the number is tells you how steep that line is. In this case, 0.5 isn't a very big number, right? It's smaller than 1, so not very steep. Okay, let's look at another one. So this is the line y equals 2 minus 2.5x. Okay, so here my y-intercept is at 0, 2, because that's what my a is, right? My a is 2. And so my a is 2. My b is negative 2.5. I keep the sign with the number. Okay? Now, this is a number that's smaller than 0. When our slope is negative, that means if we look left to right, the line is going downhill. So because the slope is negative, line's going downhill. Notice that this line is a lot steeper than the other line, right? Compared to the previous line was much flatter. This line's much steeper because we have a much bigger number. 2.5 is a number that's bigger than 1, so kind of steep. The bigger the number is, the steeper it gets. The less big the number is, the less steep it will get. Okay? Let's look at one more. Now this one kind of has an interesting equation. It's just the equation y equals negative 3. So is that even a line? The general form of a line is y equals a plus bx. It doesn't look like I have this at all, right? Well, we can kind of write that in by adding plus 0x. So thinking of b as 0 means we don't have to write it because 0 times anything is 0. So we usually just leave it off when we write it. But that's the value of b. So a is negative 3. B is 0. So indeed, my y-intercept, the place where I cross that y-axis, is 0, negative 3. So this is the y-axis, and I'm crossing it at 0, negative 3. That is, when my x is 0, my y is negative 3. Okay? My slope is b equals 0. So what does that mean? Well, it's not positive. And it's not negative. So positive would mean you're going uphill. Negative means you're going downhill, but this is neither, 0. So what does that tell us? Well, in this case, b equals 0 means you have a straight horizontal line. You're not going up. You're not going down. Okay? So when your slope is 0, you have a horizontal line. So that gives us a little bit of an idea of what these linear equations are telling us.